Some confessions were never meant to be heard. Some truths should die with those who carry them. My name is Marcus, and for 15 years I've prepared bodies for their final farewell. 15 years of washing, draining, rebuilding. 15 years of restoring dignity to those who can no longer defend it. But there's one story, one that haunts me every night when I close my eyes, one that made me question everything about life, death, and whatever lies in between. Those of you who've been following me know I've never lied to you. I've never sugarcoated what I see here. Death is real, raw, final, but what I'm about to share goes beyond death. It touches something deeper, something far more disturbing. If you're afraid of truths that shatter peace, if you'd rather believe death is simply the end, close this video now. Because what I'm going to tell you forever changed my relationship with this job. It changed my relationship with death. And maybe it'll change yours too. This is the story of Margaret Chen and how I found out that not all the dead are truly dead. It was a December night 2019. Winter had arrived early that year and the funeral home was quieter than usual. Only the constant hum of the coolers broke the silence, which seemed to seep through the walls like an invisible mist. I was finishing the preparation of Margaret Chen, a 73-year-old woman who had passed away at home 3 days earlier. According to the report, natural causes. Cardiac arrest during sleep, surrounded by family, they said. Peaceful, the kind of death we all wish for. Quiet, painless, without struggle. But Margaret was not at peace. From the moment she arrived, something felt off. Not physically. Her body showed no signs of violence, trauma, or unusual deterioration. It was something more subtle, deeper, more unsettling. First, it was the eyes. Even after I closed them, they seemed like they wanted to open. I'd shut them gently, press the eyelids down with care. But every time I turned my attention to another part of the process, there they were, slightly open, as if she were watching me. Then, the temperature. The body should have been cold, but Margaret gave off a strange sensation. Not warmth exactly, but an absence of cold that made me uneasy, as if something was still pulsing inside, something refusing to accept the end. The family had brought a navy blue dress, simple, elegant. They said it was her favorite. As I dressed her, I noticed her hands were slightly clenched, not unusual, but when I tried to open them to position them properly, I felt resistance, subtle, but there. That's when I saw the marks, small, almost imperceptible, but they were there, on her wrists, as if something or someone had gripped her tightly. Marks that weren't in any medical report. I started to wonder, what really happened in that house? What did Margaret go through in her final moments? And why, even in death, did she seem to be fighting something? During the embalming, I noticed details that deeply unsettled me. Margaret's nails were broken, as if she had scratched something or someone in desperation. There were tiny fragments of skin under them, and it wasn't hers. As I worked, replacing her bodily fluids, I started to hear whispers. At first, I thought it was the funeral home's ventilation system, but the whispers had rhythm, a pattern, almost like someone was trying to tell me something important. I stopped what I was doing and listened. Absolute silence. But the moment I resumed the procedure, there they were again. The whispers. Faint, persistent, coming from Margaret's direction. I chose to ignore it. 15 years in this job have taught me the mind can play tricks when you're alone with the dead. But then, something happened I couldn't ignore. As I adjusted her hands, Margaret moved. Not a typical post-mortem twitch, but a deliberate motion. Her fingers curled slightly as if trying to grab me. I backed away instinctively. I watched for a full 5 minutes, waiting for it to happen again. Nothing. But when I stepped closer to continue, I felt something I'd never felt before. Fear. Genuine fear of a body I had prepared myself. That's when I found the first anomaly in the medical report. The date of death was wrong. According to the document, Margaret had died on Tuesday, but she had been brought in on Monday, a full day before the official time of death. I started questioning everything. If the date was wrong, what else wasn't right? And why hadn't the family noticed the discrepancy? I decided to call the Chen family to clarify the situation. The number listed in the file was out of service. I tried the alternate number, also disconnected. That's when I realized something was terribly, inexplicably wrong. And Margaret seemed to be trying to warn me about something I didn't yet understand, but I knew it would change everything. As I was finishing adjusting the navy blue dress, I felt something strange in the lining, a small bulge, almost imperceptible. Upon closer inspection, I discovered something had been sewn inside. Carefully, I made a small incision in the fabric. Inside, I found a letter, small, folded multiple times, written in a shaky hand. The ink had an odd color, too red to be normal, too dark to be just ink. I read the letter 3 times before I could fully process its content. It was written in first person, in the unmistakable handwriting of someone elderly battling time. He's coming, don't let him find me. Please burn my body. Do not bury me where he can reach. He promised he'd take me, even after death. Don't let him keep that promise. Signed, Margaret Chen. My first reaction was to immediately try to contact the family. But when I called the main funeral office to get an alternate number, I learned something that chilled me to the bone. Margaret Chen had been living alone for 5 years. She had no close family. Her only relatives lived in China and hadn't been contacted. So who authorized the funeral? Who brought the dress? Who gave the false information? I returned to the preparation room with the letter in hand. Margaret was exactly as I'd left her, but something had changed. Her expression, it was no longer peaceful. There was tension in her features, as if she were afraid even after death. I slipped the letter into my pocket and decided to dig deeper. I called the police to report the inconsistencies, but they told me nothing seemed suspicious. Natural causes, case closed. But I knew Margaret was trying to tell me something. The letter was a warning, a desperate plea, and now looking at her face, I realized she was still fighting. Even in death, she was trying to escape something. I decided to stay at the funeral home that night. I needed to understand what was happening. I needed to protect Margaret from whoever he was. But I had no idea I was about to learn the true meaning of fear. At 10:47 p.m., I turned off all the lights in the funeral home, except the one in the room where Margaret was. I sat in a chair in the hallway, where I could keep an eye on both the main entrance and the prep room. Rain had started to fall, creating a grim symphony against the windows. At 3:17 a.m., the lights went out. All of them. It wasn't a power outage. The emergency generator should have kicked in. This was something else, deliberate, as if someone wanted me in the dark. In complete darkness, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate, approaching the room where Margaret lay. These weren't the steps of someone trying to be quiet. They were the steps of someone who knew I was there and didn't care. I managed to find my flashlight. When I turned it on, I saw a figure standing beside Margaret's coffin, a tall, thin man, dressed in a dark suit that looked like it was from another era. He was leaning over her, whispering something in her ear. When my light hit him, he turned to face me, slowly. His eyes, they didn't reflect the light. They were like empty pits, yet somehow I could feel him watching me, studying me. "I've found you," he said. His voice was low, hoarse, like it came from very far away. "After all this time, I've finally found you, Margaret." He took a step toward the coffin, and that's when I saw Margaret's face. Her eyes were open, wide open, and filled with terror, absolute terror. "You can't take her," I said, my voice coming out louder than I expected. "She doesn't want to go." He laughed, a sound that felt like it tore through the air itself. "She's belonged to me for a long time. Death is just a temporary inconvenience." And then, he vanished, just like that. The flashlight still worked, but he was gone. Only Margaret remained, her eyes still wide open, staring at me with an expression I'll never forget. I ran to the phone and called for an emergency cremation. I didn't care about protocols or procedures. Margaret had begged to be cremated, and I was going to honor that, even if it cost me my job. The next morning, Margaret was cremated. I personally oversaw the entire process, making sure every part of her body was reduced to ash. As the flames consumed the coffin, I swear I saw a look of relief on her face in the final moments before the fire reached her. I never told anyone about the letter, about the man, or what I saw that night. I told the funeral home it was a special request from the family for immediate cremation. They believed me. But the story didn't end there. 3 days later, I received a strange phone call, an elderly woman's voice with a Chinese accent. "Thank you for protecting my daughter," she said. "Margaret is finally at peace." When I asked who she was, she replied, "I'm Margaret's mother. I died 10 years ago, but I've been waiting for someone to help her escape him. Thank you for hearing her plea." The call was cut. I never heard from anyone about Margaret Chen again. But sometimes in the quietest hours of the night, when I'm alone at the funeral home, I still hear whispers. They're not threatening like before. They're grateful. I learned something that night that forever changed my understanding of death. Not all the dead are truly dead, and not all the living are truly alive. There's a space between these two worlds where some souls remain trapped, fighting against forces we don't understand. Margaret taught me that sometimes our job goes beyond preparing bodies. Sometimes we have to help souls find peace, and that some requests from the dead matter more than any protocol or procedure. I wonder how many other Margarets have passed through my hands without me realizing they weren't truly at peace. How many other souls are still fighting something I can't see, but I can feel. If you've made it this far, if you're still with me after this confession, leave the word eternal in the comments, because some stories, some truths, some battles are eternal, and maybe you have one of your own to share. Until the next confession, and remember, death is not always the end.